Today we have a special story that's all about standing up for what's right, no matter the consequences. It's the inspiring journey of a waitress who made a decision that not only changed her life, but also gave her a chance to make a difference in the world. So grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's dive into this incredible tale of courage, redemption, and new beginnings. Amara was a black waitress at Sonny's Diner, and she had no idea that one day she would make a decision that involved standing up for Steph Curry, something no one could have prepared her for. The evening shift at Sonny's Diner was always predictable for Amara, a 29-year-old waitress known for her warm smile and knack for making every customer feel special. Located in a quiet park in the small town of Berkeley in San Francisco, Sonny's was a refuge for older locals who came to enjoy pie and coffee while chatting about the past and watching their favorite sport, basketball. For Amara, the diner was more than a job. It was a comfort zone, a place where she knew everyone by name. But tonight, that familiar rhythm was about to change. The bell above the door jingled, signaling the arrival of a new customer. Amara glanced up casually, expecting a regular, but her heart skipped a beat when she saw who walked in. It was Steph Curry, the Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors, one of the most famous athletes in the world. Steph was well known in San Francisco, the home of the Golden State Warriors, and for a moment, Amara froze, unable to believe her eyes. Dressed casually in a hoodie and sneakers, he looked like he was trying to stay under the radar, but even in his simple attire, his presence filled the room. The older patrons at the counter turned to look, whispering among themselves, some craning their necks to confirm it was really him. Amara's pulse quickened. She'd seen him dominate on the court countless times, but she never imagined he'd walk into her quiet little diner. Amara was popular for her warm smile and attentive service, having worked at Sonny's Diner for 3 years, memorizing the orders and quirks of the locals. The fact that Steph Curry, a celebrity, came into their humble diner was a big deal for Amara and the regulars, who were all huge fans. Gathering her composure, she approached his table with her usual friendly demeanor. "Good evening, what can I get for you tonight?" Steph smiled warmly, kindness in his eyes, immediately putting her at ease. "Just a black coffee and maybe a slice of whatever pie you've got." "Coming right up," Amara replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. She returned to the counter, aware of the buzz his presence was causing. The regulars were murmuring, some smiling in awe, others shaking their heads. As she placed the coffee and pie in front of him, she tried her best to act normal. "Here you go, enjoy." "Thanks," Steph said, offering her another smile before turning his gaze out the window. Amara couldn't help but watch him for a moment. There was something unassuming about him despite his fame. He seemed lost in thought, maybe even a little tired. But not everyone shared her admiration. Earl, one of the older regulars and a huge fan of the Sacramento Kings, rivals of the Golden State Warriors, was known for his bluntness and critical opinions. Amara was thrilled to serve someone of Curry's stature. She admired him not only for his incredible talent on the court, but for his philanthropic efforts off it. Yet as Earl stood and approached Curry's table, her excitement quickly turned to unease. "Excuse me," Earl began, his gruff voice cutting through the diner chatter. "Aren't you that basketball guy, Steph Curry?" Steph looked up and smiled politely. "Yes, that's me." Earl crossed his arms, his face twisted in skepticism. "I've been reading about you," he said. "You make millions, but what do you actually do for people who need it? Heard you're stingy with all that cash." The accusation hung heavily in the air. Amara, who was clearing plates at the next table, froze. She glanced at Curry, whose calm demeanor betrayed no discomfort. "I try to give back where I can," Curry replied evenly. "I've supported education programs, built basketball courts for kids, and helped fund charities." Earl scoffed. "Sounds like a PR stunt to me. You big shots only care about your image." Murmurs spread across the diner, some customers nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads. Amara felt a surge of indignation. Earl's words were unfair and misinformed, and she couldn't stand by while someone she respected was berated. Summoning her courage, she stepped forward. "Earl," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside her. "That's not true. Steph Curry has done more than most people could dream of. He's given scholarships to students who couldn't afford college, donated to disaster relief efforts, and supported mental health programs. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Earl's brow furrowed. "And you believe all that? How do you know he's not just doing it for the headlines?" "Because actions speak louder than words," Amara countered. "I've read about the kids whose lives have been changed because of his foundation. He doesn't have to do any of that, but he does because he cares." Steph looked at her, surprise and gratitude flickering across his face. Amara continued, her voice gaining strength. "We live in a world where people with means don't always step up. But when someone like Steph does, it's not fair to tear them down." The diner buzzed with whispers again. Some patrons seemed moved by her defense, while others remained skeptical. Earl huffed and returned to his seat, muttering under his breath. But the damage was done. Amara noticed Mr. Sullivan, the diner's owner, stepping out from the kitchen. His expression was dark. "Amara," he said sharply, motioning for her to come over. She approached, her heart sinking. "What were you thinking?" he asked in a low voice. "You don't argue with customers, especially not regulars like Earl?" "I wasn't arguing," she replied, her voice trembling. "I was standing up for someone who didn't deserve to be treated that way." Mr. Sullivan shook his head. "This is a business, not a debate club. Earl and the other regulars are the backbone of this place. If they're upset, we lose their loyalty. I can't have that. I think it's best if you find another job." Amara felt the words like a punch to the gut. "You're firing me for defending someone?" "I'll give you a few days to transition," Mr. Sullivan said, his tone final. Her vision blurred as tears welled up, but she held her head high, refusing to break in front of him. She glanced at Curry, who had risen and was watching the exchange. A look of regret crossed his face. "I'm sorry," Curry said quietly as she passed by, gathering her things. "Thank you for standing up for me. You didn't have to do that, but it meant a lot." Amara nodded, managing a weak smile. "You're welcome." The next morning, Amara woke up feeling like her world was falling apart. Her usual enthusiasm was replaced by a deep sense of loss. She had always loved working at Sonny's diner, loved the camaraderie with the regulars and the comforting routine. But now, the sting of humiliation from the previous night felt fresh, fired for standing up for someone she admired. Amara couldn't shake the disbelief that Mr. Sullivan had let her go so easily, nor could she forget the looks the regulars gave her, their silent judgment cutting deeper than Earl's words. Still, life didn't stop. Rent was due, bills needed to be paid. Reluctantly, Amara prepared to head back to the diner one last time to collect her final paycheck. The thought of stepping into that space, facing those same people, made her stomach churn with anxiety. But she had no choice. She needed the money to stay afloat until she found another job. The morning air was crisp as she walked through the quiet streets of San Francisco. The golden glow from the rising sun bathed the city, but Amara couldn't appreciate it. Her heart was heavy, her thoughts clouded. She resolved to keep her head high no matter what awaited her. She had nothing to be ashamed of. She had spoken the truth, even when it was hard. As she approached the diner, something unusual caught her eye. Parked right outside was a sleek black SUV, its polished exterior gleaming in the sunlight. The vehicle looked completely out of place against the backdrop of Sonny's modest, slightly weathered facade. Amara hesitated, confused, before pushing open the diner door. Inside, the usual hum of conversation was absent. Instead, an uneasy silence filled the room. Amara's eyes widened when they landed on Steph Curry, seated casually in one of the booths. Despite his relaxed posture, he exuded a quiet confidence. Behind the counter, Mr. Sullivan stood frozen, his face a mixture of nerves and confusion. The regulars sat unusually subdued, their eyes flicking between Steph and Amara. The tension in the room was palpable. "Amara," Steph said, standing as she entered. His voice was warm, calm, and inviting. "Can we talk?" Amara's heart pounded as she nodded and crossed the room. For once, she didn't care about the eyes on her. She followed Steph to the booth and slid into the seat across from him, trying to keep her composure despite her racing thoughts. "I couldn't stop thinking about what happened last night," Steph began, his tone calm but sincere. You stood up for me when you didn't have to, and I respect that more than I can say. Amara blinked, unsure of how to respond. I just thought you deserved someone to stand up for you, she said quietly, her voice almost trembling. And that's exactly why I'm here, Steph continued, leaning forward slightly. What you did took courage. It showed me the kind of person you are. Someone who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard. That's rare, and it's something I deeply admire. Amara tilted her head, confusion mixing with disbelief. I don't understand, she said. Why are you here? Steph smiled, his expression kind yet determined. Because I want you to be part of something bigger than this. I'm expanding my foundation, and we're going to focus on creating more opportunities for people who've been overlooked. Kids who need mentors, people who need second chances. He paused, letting the words sink in. I want you to be a part of that. Amara's jaw dropped. You want me to join? Yes, he said, nodding. You've got a voice that matters, and I think you could really make a difference, not just for the foundation, but for the world. Together we can make some real change. Tears welled up in her eyes as her chest tightened. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll do it. Steph smiled, his eyes full of understanding. Thank you. You won't regret it. As Amara walked out of the diner, her heart felt lighter than it had in days. Her decision to stand up had led to something she never expected. A chance to help others in a way she could never have imagined. And just like that, her life was about to change for the better. That's it for today's story. We hope you were inspired by Amara's bravery and the unexpected twists in her journey. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe for more amazing stories. Let us know in the comments what part of the story moved you the most and what you'd do if you were in Amara's shoes. Until next time, keep standing up for what you believe in, stay positive, stay kind, and keep making a difference.